Recording and live.
Great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to welcome everyone to the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals for our hearing this evening, 10/24/2023. It's now 7:02, our appointed time. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Rob Ciampetti. I have the privilege of serving as chair of the ZBA, and I'll introduce members of the board. And what I'd like to do is go through before our roll call, establish who is here, whether we have a quorum, and then establish our 5 legal voting members. And what we'll do is get right into our business meeting. We'll follow the framework of our agenda. All of this material is both available as we would make reference to it for our online community. We still make available our live meetings via hybrid. Everything will be put up on the board behind you. Anyone who's logged on via Zoom will be able to see, hear, and experience any slides that are being referenced. So without further ado, I'll just take a moment to introduce everyone at the tables. We'll go into a quick overview and then jump right into the business of this evening. So take a quick moment and introduce members of the board. We have to my immediate left, Mr. Ken Swanton, our vice chair, Mr. Gregory Bennett, member. We have Mr. Walter Jenner, member, and Ms. Patricia Pecknick, associate member. We have 2 members that are absent this evening. And again, my name is Rob Ciampetti as ZBA chair. So because we have 5 members, the 5 voting members for all applications this evening will be myself, Mr. Swanton, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Shannon, and Ms. Pecknick. I will now just go through the quick sort of ceremonial exercise of calling the roll, establishing that we have a legal quorum, and off we'll go. So just calling the roll of the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals. Members of the ZBA, just kindly respond with either here or present. Mr. Swanson. Here. Mr. Bennett. Here. Mr. Shannon. Here. Ms. Pecknick. Here. And Rob Ciampetti. I'm here. That's 5 present. We have a quorum. To just give everyone a quick overview of the flow of this evening for anyone that might not be familiar with how we conduct our business at the Zoning Board of Appeals. We begin every application following the meeting agenda that's online and available. We start with our roll call, which we've just done, establish that we have the legal basis to take on the business of the zoning board this evening, which we do, and then we get into the business meeting. In our instance, we have 1 matter in our business meeting, which is a request for a minor modification on 22 Market Street. We then get into our public hearings, of which we have 3 in the sequence: 14 Peyton Street, 16 Oakland Street, and 49 Phillips Drive. The way the ZBA flow works typically, and if you've seen it before, either online or live, we will begin every application by reading the legal notice or the legal application. That's essentially myself just reading the application and describing it by applicant name, address, and usually a quick descriptor of what the applicant seeks relief for, whether the applicant seeking a special permit for nonconformities, or a variance, or in combination of those 3. And then a very brief sort of natural language description of exactly what they look to do. If the applicant's seeking to restore and rebuild and reconstruct an exterior porch, or add a room, or whatever the description is, so that one needn't, God forbid, have to be a lawyer in order to understand what is before the ZBA and what the application is about. Once I've read the legal description, we will invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come up and take the podium. We have these OWL cameras that are camera microphone combinations. They're picking up everything that everyone says and sort of zooming in on wherever the sound is coming from. So those at home can follow along and they'll be able to see whoever's speaking. So that's why we ask them to finally take the podium. We'll ask the applicant or the applicant's counsel or architect or whomever represents them to present the application, at which point we close that portion, the first portion of the public hearing. We go into the second phase of our public hearings, which is public comment. Public comment is when we invite anyone in the audience, as well as folks online, to just simply raise your hand, be recognized, and kindly give to Ms. Gretchen Joy, who's at the very rightmost of this table, our keeper of the minutes, your name and address, and then just speak your mind. You needn't necessarily say you're for or against, though you're welcome to. You needn't be in a pro or con column, though you're welcome to identify yourself that way. You can simply just share your thoughts, and we will be hearing from you. We do ask that everyone kindly govern yourselves, keeping comments to within 2 minutes. I have the discretion to I'll gently ask someone to kindly wrap things up as courteously as possible, but we rarely run into that. We just ask everyone to kindly just sort of govern yourselves as you offer those comments. Once we've gone through everyone in the audience, I then will open up to hands remotely. So anyone virtually will raise their hand and we'll do the same thing, unmute their mic, and we'll hear from them. Keep in mind, if you have a comment that is in the frame of a question, and this often happens, please understand we mean you no discourtesy if we don't respond directly to your question. Even if your comment is posed in the form of a question to members of the board, know that it's not our, we don't entertain questions, but you will surely hear some form of your question in the next phase of our hearing, which is questions from the board. This is where members of the ZBA will ask questions of the applicant or the applicant's representatives, and surely any question from the public comment section that was framed in the form of a question that didn't get answered, you will hear very surely something that you'll recognize as either your exact question or something close to it from one of the members of the board. But just understand that if you don't hear us respond to your question, know that we're not ignoring it. We're just, this is the sort of the procedural method. After we close the third section of the public hearings, which is the questions from the board, we go into the fourth and final segment, which are the deliberations. Deliberations is when you get to hear members of the ZBA just toil with the legal criteria of each application as we're taking on the facts and trying to run that through the lens of whether the applicant met the burden, whether we had additional questions. You'll hear us think out loud. That's part of the public hearing, public meeting rules. We can't have any secret conversations. So we debate and discuss this between each other and ourselves, at which point there might be some follow-on questions, and if there are, we'll ask. After we go through deliberations, we will then close, and I will then ask for a member of the ZBA to advance the matter in the form of a motion to approve. We just use that language, motion to approve, because it's Robert's rules. So know that that doesn't mean that any member of the ZBA that makes a motion to approve intends to support it or supports that application. It's just simply the procedural format to advance that application to the final stage, which is a vote from the members of the ZBA. Once a motion is made to approve the application, that motion is seconded, I will then call the roll, and every member will vote yes or no. In order to be successful, the application must have 4 votes in the affirmative, which means that 4 of the 5 folks sitting here, myself included, have to vote yes in order for the application to pass. And that's in a nutshell, zoning 101. There will be no quiz on that. So I like to go over that just so that folks have an understanding of what to expect. And without further ado, we will go right into our first matter. I'll just take a quick note and I introduce Ms. Caitlin Sullivan, who's our city planner, and Mr. Andy Fort, who is our planning director. Of course, Ms. Gretchen Joy to the far right is our keeper of the minutes, writing down everything that we say, God help. Right. So with that, we have in our business meeting a request for a minor modification. This is the matter of 22 Market Street. It is a special permit for nonconformities and a special permit, and we have voted on this once before. May we hear from the applicant, Attorney DeShay.
My name is Doug Payne. I'm an attorney with Finner and Nicholson here in Newburyport, and I represent Down East Residential LLC. Development entity for the project. With me this evening, Ben McGarry from Down East Residential LLC, and for the record, our engineer is Everett Chandler from Winter GEC LLC. Just wanted to start by reminding you what the pre-redevelopment inn looked like, and this is a picture of the original inn as prior to our permitting. So you might follow what it looked like. If we go to the next slide, please, and then this is just a second photo from the front. You recall that at the time that those 2 buildings were attached and have subsequently been separated and redeveloped as separate projects. So next slide, please. So just to give a quick outline, we are here this evening seeking approval of a minor modification to allow for the replacement of the existing windows with pre-production wood windows. You'll recall that in the original approval, we had proposed to actually have the windows that are there reconstructed and reinstalled. However, for a couple of reasons, which we're going to discuss, we have run into some fire code and safety concerns. And so as part of the seeking of the minor modification, my clients are also proposing to add a cedar-shaped roof to the building, which will be in keeping with its original design. The reason for this is because we can't build the windows that are there. Wanted to do whatever we could to help to maintain the historic integrity and historic beauty of the property. Also, as suggested by our planning staff, I want to give you a very quick overview of the minor changes that we've made or proposed to make to the project, which we have been administratively reviewed and approved as administrative. But there are minor little changes that I think the board might want to hear. So I know you have a busy agenda, so I'm going to run through these very quickly. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can ask at any time. So what I'd like to do is just show you the elevations, because I think the elevations reflect all of these minor modifications. I think these are minor modification. These administrative changes that we're proposing. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, this was the previously approved rear elevation, and we have proposed the following changes. One, you can see that we've eliminated most of that rear deck, and instead are now proposing a single stairway from the second floor. We no longer need access from two spots on the second floor, so we thought we could get rid of some of this decking and just come back with a simple stairway from one exit. I know the neighbors who we're meeting with later this week talk about the project and explain these changes to them. I know they will be very happy with this change. They were concerned about people hanging out on the deck at night and making noise, so we've eliminated the deck. You can see that the windows on the right-hand side of the building have now been shifted. We now have dual windows in their place. We've added one small window to the far left side of the building. You can see it over to the left, that small window, just to get a little more light to that room. And the only other change here is you can see that our addition on the left was originally approved to be sort of parallel, to parallel with the existing roof line there. You can see the peak of the addition is slightly offset to the right. Well, as it turns out, there was an error in our existing conditions plan, and that back portion of the building isn't actually symmetrical. The roof wasn't like this. And in fact, the dotted line on the left shows you what the actual original roof line would look like. So you can see if we would just line up the proposed addition with that new peak, we would have been over, and we don't want to be changing roof line. So if you go to the next slide, and if you look to the right, you can see what we're proposing to do now is just align the addition peak with the peak of the existing roof, so that we're not increasing any heights, we're not doing anything to affect the height, but rather it's to make the building look correct. Right now, the peaks will line up, and the ridges will be parallel. The right side will parallel the existing roof, and then the left side will come down at a slightly sharper angle. So that was just to address again, that pre-existing roof line was incorrectly shown, but we can fix it without affecting roof height or anything. So we will be keeping with our original permit. Go to the next slide, please. So this is our approved left side. And you can see that the modified left side to the right of the slide, we've eliminated all of the deck, just showing that single stairway coming down. The only other change here is, as you can see, the roof line of the addition, where it was staggered before on the left picture, is now in parallel with the existing roof line. And lastly, we proposed to put shuttered windows on the left-hand side of this elevation. They're the same location, It's just that as it turns out, the folks next door, their dumpsters, garbage storage area is right below those windows. So we thought it would be better to shutter those windows. And of course, the shutters are the same shutters that are being put on the rest of the building. Did want to let you know that we're going to shutter those windows so that our guests don't look out onto their waste disposal area. And then I guess the last slide in this group is to show you the front elevation. There really are no changes to the front elevation, except that, again, we're going to be talking shortly about using reproduction wood windows. And it's hard to see on this plan, but we did show that we are proposing to do a cedar-shaped roof now, which will enhance that front view. And then as far as the left, again, there's really no major changes other than the fact you can see the stairway now is a single stairway. The roof of the addition is now in line with the peak of the existing roof, and reproduction windows in cedar shape. So those are the minor modifications. We work with your zoning enforcement officer as well as your planner to make sure that these were in keeping with the original approvals and could therefore be considered greater than me. Still update. The project has suffered a few stops and starts due to, as always, when you're demolishing, taking a building apart for renovation, to run into some unknown things. We had some problems with foundations and things, but we are back on track and hoping to get this thing wrapped up. So if we go to the next slide, please. This is really, I'm sorry. I just took the site plan as approved, and I sketched in the new stairway in the back that you can see it in blue. And I provided you some copies of that plan if you can't see it well enough. But I just wanted to show you that the new stairway, which comes straight down, will be located as shown on the plan, and all of the decking there that was previously approved will no longer be added. So I think that was a good improvement, and one, as I said, the neighbors were, I'm sure, will be very supportive of getting rid of those decks. So, Kayla, if you could jump to the next slide, please. And again, this is, ladies and gentlemen, the reason we're here tonight is to seek a minor modification. And specifically, what we would like to do is allow the existing windows, which were previously proposed to be reconstructed, to instead be replaced by very high quality reproduction wood windows that will look identical to the windows that are there, although they will be new modern windows. I'll show you in a minute. We actually have a sample of the window. And again, the basis for request is twofold. One, energy conservation considerations. Now, I will admit that historic buildings do have exemptions from meeting the current energy codes and meeting FERS ratings and anything else that a new building would be required to meet. Do have an exemption from that. But that doesn't mean we won't still have to face the issue of trying to keep this building with the single pane, older wood windows in place. And as you might recall, and I'm sure you've seen throughout the city, this building and others that have the older windows, original windows or older reproductions, end up putting storm windows on the building. There were storm windows on this building originally. And to me, my clients are concerned that if they do the older windows, which I'll explain in a minute, it's just going to be a nightmare trying to keep this place without putting all your energy and effort and money providing either stored windows or replacement. You wouldn't have to replace. But if you're putting all that money into storing the windows, it would be a shame to have to put store windows That's just a consideration. Again, do have an exemption from the energy code, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't still be incredibly expensive and inefficient to heat this place. The biggest basis or the strongest basis for our request, safety considerations, which in just a moment I'll let Mr. Legary walk you through the safety concern that they ran into in doing these windows. And again, as I mentioned, my client was very forthcoming when we originally came in and working with the Historic Commission and the trust, and tried to provide all of the requirements and requests that they asked for. And one of them was, would you consider rebuilding these windows rather than replacing them? And we did say yes. He had every intention of doing that until we ran into this problem. However, because we are now in a way sort of stepping back a little from the historic preservation aspect of the building, he has proposed, my clients have proposed, that they would be willing to reconstruct the roof now with cedar shapes. So I understand it was this building would have originally had back in its day. So while we might be taking a minor little step back in the historic preservation, we're offering a good step forward, really preserving the building. So we would hope that the board will allow us, it will allow us to replace those. That I'd like to let Mr. Gary just walk you through the safety concerns, and I know he has an example of the reproduction windows that they're proposing to you.
Thanks for having me tonight.
Go to the next slide too.
Okay, yeah, I can go to the next. So this kind of all started, I guess I haven't had a ton of experience actually saving windows. Last time was not, apparently I've learned some lessons on periods of houses and stuff. But as we got into the project and we started talking to people about reconstructing the windows and getting them repaired, I went in kind of testing the operability of them, kind of how bad they are, and kind of started lifting them. And the first time I went in, I lifted it up and it immediately slammed shut and one of the panes of glass cracked. And it was pretty abrasive, pretty hard. First thing that came to mind was that it's completely unsafe. I mean, I have 5 and 7-year-old kids. Windows are always a big concern for me. I even put impact windows because I'm a little crazy about fall protection on my house. So, first thing I was thinking is just, our kids and, elderly people with facilities, are they going to be able to utilize windows? And it's in an emergency, are they going to know and be able to hold this window up with one arm and stick their head out the other with their head? And then second is this simple of a common problem that happen is a child lifts the window. So after witnessing this, I kind of had a conversation with Preservation Trust, a couple different people, found out that the reason this is because they're first period windows. Back then, they never had the pulley systems. The last windows that I did, they had the pulley systems. So shame on me, I expected them to be similar. This is a lesson in that type of period architecture, even though I went to architectural history classes in college, I still didn't get that. So the way that these will stay open is there's a little clip that I highlight. So I had to call a friend of mine, Mick Cracknell, and said, hey, how do you stay open? How does this work? He explained it and directed me to that little clip where you open it all the way out and put the clip in, and it can hold the window open. Admittedly, I didn't know that, and the first thing that I thought of is there is no chance my kids or many of the people that stay in this hotel are going to know that. So that took me to look into, are these even allowed by code, and how does that look in code wise? Because it's a public building, you're having transient guests that are staying at your facility. I already know that commercial buildings have a massively increased safety risk with sprinklers and exit signs and egress, all that stuff. So it kind of brought me to the code and did bring me to a section that found out why I believe that they do not meet code. And I think, after many talks with, civic officials and stuff, we have come to the conclusion that something does have to happen. The way they sit, if they are restored as they sit, they do not meet code. And the reason why is in the Mass State Building Code, R 310.1.1 is operational constraints and control devices. It says emergency escape and rescue opening shall be operated from the inside of the room without use of tools or special knowledge. So special knowledge is repeated in the 310.2.1 and minimum opening area, where it says the net clear opening dimensions required by this section shall be obtained by normal operation of the emergency escape and rescue opening from the inside. Now, after many discussions, we kind of working out like, is this normal operation? Does this take special knowledge? You know, a child cannot know to operate this window. I think that's, you know, what we've come up with, I think with all city officials is the situation we have right now is if they're restored the way they are in this very, very unique situation. And I have to repeat, this is not something you may never see again, because in a residential home, I don't think this applies, because that residential homeowner knows how to operate their own windows. So it will not take special knowledge to operate windows that you currently own. And then even in the commercial code, there's exemptions for museums, for office buildings, for all sorts of commercial uses, except for sleeping. It breaks down that, you know, they assume that some people are hard sleepers, some people have sleep apnea, some people don't wake up well, and in the middle of the night, it's a lot more dangerous of a situation to find yourself out of an escape route than if you're in an office building wide awake. You're going to have a lot more time to react. So I guess right now we sit after discussions with all city officials that, you know, something has to be done. And the two options that we are right now is that we go through the building, one window in every building has to be replaced in every room. So every room, sleeping room in the building, one of the windows would have to be, you know, a window that has, and I think it's the FGIA or AAMA certification now, which is the certification testing that requires for construction windows. And then we have options of, you know, because they are unsafe to lift, we would have to either screw 50% of the windows in the building shut permanently, or we would follow the directions of Chapter 12, Historic Buildings Code, that dictates directions on how to replace structures. So those are our two options. We basically go room by room and replace the window, and others is screw half of the window shut and make sure that, or you know, we would replace them in lifetime. And that drop room in section 12, which is the section. This is the section that homeowners gives homeowners that want to take the risk and know that, you know, they know their windows, it's their risk to take, it's their energy to lose. This is the section that gives them the incentive to not be building. So if you go to that section, which again doesn't apply for commercial because I can't take that risk for other people. So if I have a family staying there, it's not really my right. Okay, I feel comfortable that your family is safe. It's meant for homeowners that says I feel comfortable that I'm on it, and it allows them to do. But in that section, there is direction on how to deal with this. And there's a general where it says repairs to any portion for building or structure shall be permitted with original or like materials and original methods of construction subject to the chapter. There's another section that says unsafe conditions. Unsafe conditions deemed of the building code official shall be remedied. So it actually gives you that if there's an unsafe condition, it has to be fixed. And then there's a replacement condition. So there's replacement of existing or missing features using original material shall be permitted, period. And it says partial replacement or repairs that match the original configuration, height, size shall be permitted. So it actually, and then it goes on to say replacement of glazing of hazardous locations have to comply with chapter 24. So if you find an unsafe condition, if your egress requirements have to be operated with prior knowledge, that's where we kind of aim to. We have a decision. And so we're here today to ask, I mean, we did do a lot of research and we did find a company that creates reproduction wood windows. They're some of the best that we found. I think you guys worked with them before, Greenmount Windows out of Vermont. So they make solid windows. They're meant to replicate existing. The only difference is so they've been tested. They have a certification on them. They need safety issues to get out of the building. So, you know, if you look at them, I mean, besides the steel from the front of the building, many cases, they replicate an existing window. So we're proposing to, instead of screwing 60% of the building windows that have always operated shut completely forever, which I have to say still creates, in my opinion, a safety issue because my kid's 5 years old. There's a fire, just crawl on the floor, he goes to the first window, it's nailed shut. He goes to the next window, nailed shut. He won't go to the third. He's gonna start banging and screaming and he possibly did that. So if there's a fire situation, I'm not sure screwing windows, although that is an option, not a great option for me. So what I proposed today was I would like to ask the board's permission to replace with the whole building has reproduction wood windows, which right now actually the back of the building is not required to have these. So it was going to be the reproduction up front, but the back could have been, you know, probably something a little bit normal that you see today. So we're proposing to do the entire building in with reproduction windows, where some of the others wouldn't have. And then in my, I did go to school for architecture and I do have appreciation for historic buildings. So one of the things that I noticed on a lot of historic structures that on High Road, there's multiple on High Road. I got married at Spencer Pierce Farm. All of those structures have cedar shake. And they get replaced periodically. I think a lot of them on High Road recently got replaced. So in my opinion, you know, replacing the wood windows is a major, major safety jump forward. It allows us to meet code. And then on top of it, I think the cedar shake roof is going to really, really add, and it's going to recreate that look of all the other true historic homes on High Road and throughout the state of Massachusetts that can now be maintained going forward in the original character. Storm windows are not original. Asphalt roofing is not original. All of that stuff, but wood windows with wood roofs is. So respectfully, I would hopefully we can get support to possibly replace with these replicant reproduction.
Was there anything further?
So at the end of the day, it's just about a code compliance. We would have to replace at least one window in each room with this window in any event. And it's been said that in order to make code, we'd have to, you know, permanently shut the rest of the windows, which is nothing anyone wants to. So we prefer to just do all the windows and these high quality reproductions, either roof on and end up with a safe and incredibly looking restored historical. So thank you very much for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Can we take a look at the window? Sure. Come on. If we break and we bought it, this is heavier than I thought.
It is heavy, right?
Wow. God, that's way heavy.
But that's the weight that's out there, and it's picture that with absolutely nothing. It's
Right.
a risk of breaking fingers, stuff like that.
Okay. I'm going to reserve questions until we get to questions, and we'll see what else the public might have. But thank you for bringing that. So while members of the ZBA are passing around our show and tell, I'm going to close that portion of the presentation on the request for minor modification, and I'm going to invite anyone who might be in the audience or share public comment. Anyone in the room? Do you like to share a comment or be heard? Please just feel free to raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. Seeing no hands in the room, I'll go on. And of our attendees, only 5 attendees logged in. Anyone who is listening and wish to raise your hand. I see Glenn Richards. Richard, you could go ahead and unmute your mic and we'll do the same, and you have the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So you can hear me. It's Glenn Richards, 6 Kent Street. First start by saying the historical, you know, I'm with the historical commission, but the commission has not reviewed this change request. So
Yeah.
What was that?
We can't hear you, but we see We see that you're speaking, but your mic is muted.
Huh. Let's see. Well, it says I'm unmuted here. Let me see. Hang on a second, let me try something different.
And again, we can't hear you, but we can tell from the Zoom notation of the microphone icon that you're speaking. You want to just bottom left, make sure you unmute your mic.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
All right.
You're still not hearing me?
We are.
All right.
I think you can hear us. Oh,
All right, why don't you go to the next person if you can, and I'll see if I can straighten myself out.
No, that's what I'm trying to,
Oh.
yeah.
All right. Let's do this.
It's not pulling it from the owl.
Hmm?
Did you switch it to the owl? It's not pulling from the owl.
Glenn, give us a moment. We're going to ask you to pause for just a second. We believe it might be on our end, and
Speaker should be on the owl.
we're going to try to change something here, and we'll give you
They've been able to hear.
those in just a moment.
I think you switched over those. Yeah, just two-sided. Glenn, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Did you hear us a moment ago?
Yeah, I was hearing you the whole time.
Great. We apologize, Glenn. That was on our end, but we can hear you now, and you can hear us. So you know,
Okay. All right, no problem. All right, very quickly, Glenn Richards, 6 Kent Street, and although I'm with the Historical Commission, the commission has not reviewed this, so I'm speaking just for myself here, not on behalf of the commission or anything like that. So just want to make that clear. I only had a small screen phone to review the plans on, but anyway, all I wanted to say was, you know, I understand the problem with the fire codes, the egress, etc., and I certainly appreciate that the kind of windows they're looking at appear to be, you know, very good quality reproductions. So all I would say is that while on the one hand, changing from restored windows to replaced windows, I wouldn't call that a quote minor modification. However, under the circumstances, you know, I understand the need for it, and all I would suggest is that if the ZBA just try to ensure that they do in fact use the type of high quality reproduction style window that is, you know, thermally effective and all that, but yet especially from more than a couple of feet away, will mimic the look of the original windows with good fidelity. That is, you know, as you all know, it's very important. But I kind of, you know, I don't think it's going to be a fatal change myself personally. Just speaking for myself, as long as they do use those, you know, quality windows with, you know, 3-dimensional muntins and the whole bit. And I think that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. I can circle back just in case you have anything else you wish to add, but for now, I'm just going to see if there's anyone else online via Zoom who wishes to raise their hand and be heard. All right, seeing no hands, and once more in the room, anyone who wishes to be heard? Thank you very much. So we will close the public comment portions of the public hearing and go right into questions from the board. And we'll start with Mr. Swan.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we just had the chair of the Historic Commission on who, have you guys gone, I know back last year when you went through this process, you spent a long time with the Historic Commission.
Oh, yes.
Have you been back in front of them this year? So would this change?
No, we didn't, only because the Historic Commission had issued, their original statement where we had proposed to do the restoration of the windows. And again, we had agreed to that. That was our intention until this problem came to light. So I know Ben did reach out and talk with some of the members of the trust and maybe even some of the members of the commission individually, but again, where this was a code-driven thing, and we did our research to make sure that we used the highest quality reproduction windows. We were able to determine that the Green Mountain Window and Door Company had been utilized for restoration of windows in the city before. And again, as was suggested by Mr. Richards, my clients will in fact commit to using these very windows that we've shown you, and again, have been proven as effective reproductions in the city. So
I'm also willing to commit to.
you guys come up.
Yeah, so I'm also willing to, which wasn't in the last approval, to the entire building. So right now, you know, it may have been Anderson in the back and refinishing. I'm willing to commit to the reproduction windows, but also committing to requiring it on every single window in the building.
I guess my question was more, I realize what you're proposing to do.
Yeah.
My question was more about your involvement with the Historic Commission, because the way this happened last year, this is kind of a big project. And it was over the threshold that the Historic Commission had to thoroughly review this thing and give us input. And that was a key input that we used in making our decision. I was here on that decision and I supported the decision. My concern is, I know Mr. Richards said, well, I kind of like some of this stuff, but he also said, I don't think this is a minor modification. And he also said, I'm only speaking for myself because the commission hasn't seen this. So, I mean, the purpose of tonight is more to think, is this a minor modification? We already have one guy saying, I don't think it's minor, and we don't know how the rest of them feel. I just feel a little awkward when I look at their advice to us from last year. This is one of the key points they made, that, you know, they're doing a lot of stuff, but they're restoring all the windows. Now, I realize the fire chief has said the ones on the side, you need access. I realize, you know, those, I get it. I don't think you have a solution. I mean, and I would think the Historic Commission would probably agree with that, because you have no other choice. But when it comes to the ones on the front, which is the primary facade that faces the rest of the city, I don't know how they feel. You know, I heard one guy say he's okay with it, but I don't know how the rest of them feel. And for me, they were a big part of, they are always a big part on one of these as input to us. When it triggers the DOCD bylaw, they are a big influence, and it was so important to them last year. I would have felt much better tonight if you had said, oh yeah, we stopped at their meeting last week and we bounced around with them. I know you didn't have to.
Well, I did reach out to the trust. I haven't gotten great willingness to work at this point. So I pushed to try to meet, and, you know, so that is part of our decision, but, you know, and just so you know, it's not just we could leave the front. We don't just need an egress. These windows were deemed unsafe for a specific hotel use, because if they lift, they can slam shut.
No, I understand,
yeah.
but you mentioned there was another alternative, which is just to keep them shut. And I realize you may not want to do that, but I don't know. I would like to hear the historic experts on that. We don't have a lot of inns and hotels in Newburyport. We hardly ever see these things. I'm not surprised. We're kind of learning here as we go.
Yeah,
But anyway.
I didn't know this code even.
And I'm glad you're seeing the neighbors soon to ask them about some of the changes. It would have been more powerful if you'd already seen them when you got here tonight.
Yeah, well, I did, in my defense, I waited around for an hour and, you know, no one showed, so we had to reschedule. We're kind of, I don't know what happened, but, you know, I did go to the meeting we did, so we're meeting again this week. But it does come down to, you know, realistically, you know, I did hire a professional code consultant when I couldn't get the trust involvement, so I actually brought his email with me. And his explicit email is that, you know, although you proposed it, you know, he spoke to me as it's not your right to take that risk. Chapter 12 is not written. It actually in the last version, it was actually chapter 11. And right in the first paragraph, and it says chapter 12 is meant for homeowners who would like to be exempt from code by the building inspector. And it says exclusively that chapter 12 cannot be used to force a homeowner to abide by chapter 12. So it was chapter 11 back then. Chapter 12 changed a little bit in their scope up top, but what we kind of came to is, you know, we're in this part of like, there is nothing that I found in the code book for a forced unsafe living condition, because right now, it's not just, so the AAMMA testing, which is now, I have it written down, it's got changed into some other glazing society. It's not just operational constraints and balances, it's impact testing, I actually wrote down exactly what it is, but, so actually, I'll read you. They go through, the reason why new windows are meant for new construction windows is it's not just that. They go through water leakage, air leakage, structural strength, performance entry, forced entry performance, life cycle durability, component performance. So it gets to even screwing them shut. There's 100% an argument to be made that that's still unsafe because the window is forced to look just like the other two windows. So a 5-year-old in a fire condition crawling on the floor, that is a very unsafe condition to have a window that's non-operable, but looks operable.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I just wanted.
Yeah.
You mentioned you tried to reach out to the historic group. You didn't mention the historic commission, you mentioned the historic trust.
Yeah.
Did you try to reach out to the historic?
I think
commission?
we did. So our original filings, we were planning to go to historic, but the consensus was that, the recommendation, comes to, they want to preserve the windows, so they're not gonna take a code position. Like, of course, their job is historic preservation.
We don't, I mean, we look for their input, and they don't
Yeah.
talk about code, they just give us input from
Yeah.
their perspective, they're not code experts.
Yeah.
So
Well, it does say, chapter 12 also, it does say that like, just like on Merrill Street, the house that was forced to be torn down, there's a specific code that unsafe conditions are deemed to be, they have to be.
Please
remedied.
realize, I'm not asking about the code.
Yeah, okay,
I'm simply asking you,
yeah,
if you went back to the people who advised us last time.
yeah, sorry, yeah. No,
That's all I'm asking.
I think that was the original intention, I'm not sure what happened, yeah.
Let's, let me just pause for a moment, not to interrupt, Mr. Swanton's flow, but Andy,
Sorry, just in terms of procedures and so forth, just in terms of coordination with the office, just to be fair, in terms of the applicant. We, the office in any way, when the applicant was consulting with our team, I guess our sense, I was speaking myself as director, we didn't necessarily think that the historic commission would change its position relative to preservation, given it was already part of the project, recommended previously and part of the permit here. And perhaps that's, assuming too much, but that seems likely to the outcome. And given that the building commissioner had basically already conveyed some of the information we're talking about here about safety of the windows, we had heard that information or interpretation from him, as our code enforcement official, we weren't necessarily assuming that would be overridden by the historic commission per se. So, while certainly the applicant be directed back based on something being considered more major in nature related to the permit, back to the historic commission, we didn't necessarily think it was going to result in anything different in terms of the feedback you might receive here. So you might still be posing the same question, and I would imagine the historic commission suggesting the windows be any options be looked at to see if those windows are restored in accordance with the original approval.
okay, Mr. Swanton, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to give you the opportunity to continue.
Yeah, no, I mean,
There were questions too, so.
I hear you, Andy, but we've already heard one of the historic commission members say, well, I kind of like the windows. So if they all said that, then this would be easy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So anyway, that was just my question. It was really more of they're the people who advise us, and I'd be curious how they felt about it.
Yeah.
And to have one of them already say it's not a minor modification makes me wonder. Anyway, I will pass and on to the next person.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Bennett.
Well, I have no questions. I guess I have a question for the chair or for Andy. When and under what circumstances does the historic commission have the authority or the right to issue comments to us relative to something of this nature?
Sure. So on their own accord, they can do so whenever they wish on any matter, really. Here in relation to the ordinance, when an application is filed for a permit, the initial application that comes in, the ordinance requires that to be routed to the historic commission in those given instances. Routed to the historic commission, they're given a time period to comment. In this case, the applicant was asking for a modification. I'm trying to think of how many instances this sort of situation has come up between either the ZBA or the planning board, since more recent ordinance years, but in essence, I think in part what we sometimes assume will happen is if, to Ken's point, and I think I'll just speak for myself again, I had felt this was a more significant change given where the initial permit had left off, what the expectations were at that time.
Excuse me,
then-
let me just ask a few questions that will
Sure.
help me. The request for minor modification was filed with the zoning board of review, correct?
The result of appeals, correct?
Okay,
Correct.
right.
Yeah.
And I take it that the historical commission has access to the agenda.
That's correct. I mean, we
Okay.
don't actively.
Just let me finish.
Sure.
And I mean, so did you or anybody in the zoning office receive any communication from the historical commission regarding this project?
No, you're aware of no.
Is it fair to say that the historical commission was aware of this? I mean, don't they review the agendas?
Well, that I cannot.
I mean, I'm asking you to speculate, but
We are not,
would it be
we don't actively.
a
send it out to
reasonable
them.
assumption to assume that the historical commission, if it had an interest in this, would have weighed in?
I can't.
Gotcha,
make assumptions
I
about the
understand.
numbers.
I think would be a reasonable assumption myself.
I'll say, I'll just, as just sort of a parenthetical comment to what we've heard so far, I think that it's never, I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, I don't believe that it's the applicant's determination as to whether it is minor or major. They present what they would like to do, and it is vetted through
Well, that's
the
the
scrutiny
second
of
question.
the office to determine whether they believe in their sort of objective role.
Right.
And their principles sort of, you know.
But that was the
point of,
second
like tip of the spear role, whether.
phase of this. I wasn't asking about whether it's a minor modification or not. I was asking procedure whereby the historical commission gains access to information relative to a matter pending before the zoning board of appeals.
Well, and my answer was responsive to that, mainly because there's a distinction between what's available on the internet or what they might follow, actively on their own, the agendas, versus something that is actively going out and triggered by the ordinance or by office in accordance with regulations. So that obviously would be an automatic to them.
Right.
Here, they may not automatically be notified
I
about
understand.
something. There might be some sort of consultation or comments they give us.
Gotcha.
And, to the chair's point, I think I see this as something where this is the specific reason why essentially the office had routed this material back to you and did not see it in any way, the window piece, for instance, as something that the staff, a minor modification that staff could sign off on. This was something that had to go back to the board, and then the board here would have to decide whether to want to further it back input from another board, or continue to the hearing to get more information, or a hearing that's advertised.
Just to be clear. The matter was filed, it was a public document, it was on the agenda. Staff of the zoning board of appeals did not transmit that to the historical commission because it had no legal obligation to do so. Okay, now, let me ask another question. I understand the zoning officer determined all of these requests to be minor modifications. Correct.
Then again, if the board is, I was not myself, I did not feel myself, and again, the zoning administrator and I consult, we discuss these matters typically when there's something on that sort of line, if you will. I think I certainly felt, and again, when the office, remember the decisions say that the zoning administrator can run some things as minor modifications essentially to me. I was not comfortable that the window change here was something that could be done as a minor modification, just to be clear, because the spectrum of modification procedures that someone can use, some of them are so small that could be done as a staff level change under your permits. Some of them are triggered by the ordinance and have to be running back to the board.
I understand there are administrative minor modifications, which can be just that, approved at the administrative level. Is that what you're saying?
In effect,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So there are also, I understand, minor modifications that have to be approved by the zoning board of appeals.
Correct.
Okay. Now, Mr. Deschamps, I thought in a letter that you sent to us, that you indicated that the whole kit and caboodle was approved by the zoning officer as minor modifications. Am I misreading that?
I-
Could you clarify
I
that?
think it's a function of semantics,
Okay.
sir. In my understanding, there are actually 3 levels of modifications. One are changes which your zoning and planning group determine are, and I'm not gonna use the word minor, because that's a secondary, that are of such nature that they can be handled at the administrative level. And those are things that are in keeping with the permit, like for instance, going from a deck with a big stairs to a smaller stair. So those are administrative changes, and those are the things that I went through earlier tonight. Those have been these little administrative things that we work with staff, and they've said, you know, we can approve those. The second level of modifications, and this is one where I don't, as you pointed out, thank you, I don't say this is a minor modification. We submit a letter saying we'd like to make a change. Do you deem this a administrative level minor or a major change? When a change is deemed minor, as this window change was, the process is to come back to this board and address it at this level. If it's deemed a full major modification, we're essentially required to start the process over, meaning a hearing with the Historic Commission, a hearing with you, public notice to the neighbors. So those are major modifications, and those, sir, I believe would have triggered a need to start over with Historic, start over with you, start over with neighbors.
Well, let me interrupt you. Are you contending this is a minor modification? Are you contending that the zoning board of appeals can approve this as a minor modification?
Yes, sir, and that determination, however, was not made by me. It was made by your staff and the zoning determination order. When I said, we want to make this change, they're the ones that said, it's not an administrative change, Doug. It does fall in a minor modification, which requires us to come back to you.
Okay.
They
Let me
also
just ask you another
concluded
question.
it wasn't a major.
Okay, I am not done. I have
Oh, I'm
another
sorry,
question.
sir.
Excuse me. So I would like you to tell me why you believe this is a minor modification, subject to approval by the zoning board.
It is my personal opinion,
Well,
because I'm not able to
asking
deem
for
it,
your legal opinion,
but the
not your
truth.
personal.
Right, but the truth, sir, is this is not I don't believe this rises to the level of a major change to this project because it's just not substantial. When you consider all of the terms and conditions and all of the approvals that went into this restoration of the building, while it may seem to be the most important thing to say the Historic Commission, or perhaps some of you members, the fact that we're going to go from restoring the windows to replacing them with exact reproductions in the scale of the project, yes, sir, I feel it's a minor, which requires your consideration. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Bennett, was there anything further? Okay.
Yeah, just a point of clarification again, because I realize that, and Doug was speaking to some of the sort of first level, so to speak. When, myself, the zoning administrator, when we feel that there's something that is substantive in nature to the original approval, either from the written decision, say special conditions focus specifically on preservation of windows or something substantive based on the record of the hearing, there's a lot of talk about those windows, or there's a couple of comment on the plans, it was discussed in the length. Things like that. That's a situation in which we might say, this is substantive enough to send back to the board. We leave it to the board to determine whether or not it feels it needs input from another body or wants to have an advertised public hearing in order to modify the permit. We were just saying, essentially, we don't think that this window component is something that staff level can do. Removal of the deck, for instance, we didn't necessarily feel that was a problem to do at staff level because we didn't see it to be an addition of essentially a problem, given that the board had originally approved it included. So. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Andy. I'm gonna move on through questions from the board, and then we might take a quick pause to unpack one or more of these points, but Mr. Shannon, any questions from you?
I had a question as to what was put in front of us. It relates to the deck. It's more just to understand. So the decks were originally put there for two forms of egress from the second floor. And now everything says, we don't need to. That because people can
So
die.
actually, I didn't do the original plans, but I went to architecture school, so what I did is that second unit, that was their means of egress, so I reconfigured the interior, so we took the plans from the architect and I kind of took a second look at it from my background, reconfigured the layout a little bit and was able to dump their second means of egress into the hallway instead of directly out. So it kind of took some reconfiguring, but I think it.
There are still two egresses.
Yes, yes.
Just not out the back door.
Yeah, just every unit doesn't have to go directly to the outside. They just need to have one in the front, which that unit had that side stair, and then their second goes out that way. Yeah, so it just took a second look at it.
Thought maybe the fire code had collapsed in 2 months.
No.
Excellent, thank you. Anything further? No? All right, Ms. Peckney.
Yes, I have quite a few notes. And may I say something to Mr. Bennett in response to the point that he made? Mr. Bennett, when I was on the historical commission, I did, follow this agenda very closely. It takes quite a bit of time because things get continued and then there are late files and people ask for something that's a minor modification and not notified. I think I was perhaps unusual in following applications from the NHC to the ZBA. And that's how I got here.
I appreciate that.
But I wanted to ask, let's consider the plan in which you could replace one window per sleeping room, and Mr. Swanton mentioned the side elevation. If you're citing safety concerns, I've been in zero into hotels where there were operable windows on upper floors. I've never been in a hotel where I could just simply open the window that much. Is the intent to have guests on the upper floors able to fully open a window whenever they want? Or is it just a fire safety concern in case there's a 5-year-old?
Well, you mean with respect to providing one code meeting egress window and closing the others permanently?
Like if you're replacing them wholesale, is it because you want hotel guests to be able to open the windows and
Yeah.
stick their head out?
Yes,
Is that the
well-
goal? Because that seems unusual to me as a
No,
guest.
quite honestly, it isn't a function of being able to look out or, get air, because of course there would always be that one required window. It really comes down to a safety issue. I mean, if you had a room that had 3 windows or 4, the idea of having 3 out of the 4 shut and they all look identical, it just presents I think an odd safety issue. And again, if it was my own home, I have the right to be able to, make that decision, because the people staying in my home will hopefully not or open their own windows. But when you're talking people coming out of town or, out of the country and everything else, I just wouldn't want, and my clients just wouldn't want to have all identical windows, but only one works to get out of the building in an emergency. That's really, it all comes down to the safety. It really does. And to be honest, these reproduction windows are gonna be indistinguishable from the windows that are there today and won't have ugly storm windows over.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with that other plan though, of replacing one.
yeah.
So I know when Scott Brown was the architect in this project, he really insisted on the restoration of the windows. And again, the applicant assured that the historical commission that the developer would repair and restore rather than replace the historic windows. And then the advisory report says possibly some original windows. I know you did consult with the Preservation Trust. I understand that once you decided to replace the windows, their enthusiasm for volunteering to help you with that. I can understand if they kind of withdrew from that. But the city, the reason that I'm wondering, again, the same thing Mr. Bennett asked, how it can be considered a minor modification. The city has a publication called Guidelines for Preservation and Replacement of Historic Windows in Newburyport, under which it says only windows deteriorated beyond repair should be replaced. And the DCOD ordinance outright says that one of the purposes of our zoning is to help perpetuate and maintain the established skill of local tradespeople, in this case, window restoration experts. So I wonder if you've looked at that publication. Do you have a copy of any assessment or any quote that you got from someone like Allison Hardy, the window woman? She's not the only person, but maybe they're well known.
So yeah, we did. So I completely understand. I mean, I've been saying since day one, I don't want to set a precedent. I don't want anything to continue into any other's application. We did talk to window woman. We talked to a second guy. So we've talked to multiple guys. It's actually a lot cheaper for me to repair the windows, like drastically. And then if you add on the roof, it's drastically, it's pennies on the dollar versus what we're offering. But my opinion why we're here today is I didn't start that this is an opinion. This is a code, it actually says in chapter 12 that if something's deemed unsafe, that's it. And I got a letter from a code consultant that literally spells out that exact same thing. If there's something deemed unsafe, there is procedures to follow in chapter 12. It's not an opinion. Listen, my kids ride in the back seat of my car with a car seat and car seat belts on. That's how I function. If people want to throw their 3-year-old in the front seat of their car and hope that nothing bad ever happens, then that's fine, but I'm gonna fight to make sure people are safe.
Right, okay.
And, you know, so, and that's where I get to, I did follow up on that. So that was the first question the building inspector asked me. He said, you need to prove to me that you can't build these windows into compliance. So that struck me into a couple of weeks. This has been going on for a while. So that struck me into a couple of weeks to talk to window repair people, this and that. And that led to me, it's not possible because it's not compliance as if I think they're kind of compliant. It's either you're compliant or you're not. And the only compliance is you have to meet the new certification of windows, which is, and I looked into the procedures of the AAMA certification process, which has now changed. For a private citizen, it's completely unfeasible. It's lab testing, it's big money. It's basically creating your own window company, going through the rigorous testing progress. And that's the only way you can actually meet code. And, you know, now that we know that there is a safety violation, now that we've pointed out to clear violations, and I don't think there's any dispute that these windows do violate, you know, what happens if something does happen? Who's getting sued? That's where it comes down to if there's a wrongful death or something, you know, and we kind of came this direction because obviously we don't want to create a precedent. I don't want to draw attention that somebody else is going to be piggyback. I would like people to keep historic windows. I originally wanted to keep these historic windows. So we figured instead of pushing a code override that would not take mitigation or board meetings, we figured that a mitigation option is the best generous option to try to say, hey, let's give everybody their say, let's explain our side of the story. And then let's offer something that roof is gonna cost way more than all of those windows combined, you know? So that's kind of where we were like, I think let's give before we take, you know, and that's what we tried to do in the beginning. Unfortunately, I don't have an option. If you guys vote, I was already told that if those windows are repaired the way they sit, I won't get a certificate of occupancy. And so unless they're screwed shut, and at that point, I hate to say it with a person with kids, I have to argue that, you know, there is a difference. The code tells you saying there's different codes. So commercial buildings that are over 3 stories do not require operable egress windows. They have a whole different set of codes, but they have different sets of stair egress requirements. That is 3 stories and above. They look at it as, well, you're not going to jump out the window. A ladder's not going to reach you. So we're going to increase your safety egress requirements. And that's how you work it. But on smaller buildings that are 2, 3 stories and below, they do require egress requirements and people do rely on opening windows. And, you know, I know this isn't the purview of this or the historical, but to screw shut the entire southern side of a building is drastically against, I thought, everything what this city stands for in terms of green energy and environmental safety and design, because this thing is going to have heat gain like no tomorrow. The entire south side of this property is screwed shut. We don't have the correct insulation because we can't meet 6-inch stud walls. So we're going to have increased heat into the building, and we're going to rely solely to keep this building satisfied. We're going to rely heavily and solely on mini splits and air conditioning.
Okay, so you're saying,
yeah.
so you're trying to say, yes, he recognizes there are exemptions for historic buildings, but you're saying not really, not in a way that's practical
Not
for you.
commercial in a transient sleeping facility.
Can I interject for a moment and just take sort of privilege of the chair for a moment, and Technic, I'll ask your indulgence as well as Mr. McGarry's. We have our building codes commissioner on the attendees on Zoom and his hands up, so I'd like to take a pause. Since this is dealing directly in the matters of code, we needn't guess. We have Mr. Greg Earls. Mr. Earls, I suspect you hear us. If you do, and I see your hand up, and we're going to recognize you. And we're hopeful that you've been listening and can offer some insight to help fill out and round out this discussion. So you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Great. I did meet with the applicant before this meeting, a few days before the meeting, and I reiterated many times that it is not a code issue. There is one egress window that would be to the side elevations for every sleeping room. That's all it's required. These windows are not required for egress by any code. The condition they are in now is a safety hazard. If they were repaired so they weren't a safety hazard or even fastened shut, there's no code issue. They're not being repaired. If they're not being replaced, they don't have to hit the window association specifications. So there's nothing here that's code as it stands. Now, I'm not saying that you may want or not want, fixed windows in the city, but I couldn't keep just sitting still here and hearing that it's a code violation. It is not. It will be a code violation if they operate the way they do now and they try to get a C of O. But fasten shut, which is the simplest, perhaps not the greatest, but the simplest solution, it would get a C of O. You have one egress window per sleeping room.
Greg, we're no longer getting you?
Yeah, I think I froze.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
So if they were, I'm gonna ask a question if I could, not to get into too much of the dialogue, but this is important for us, I think, and for my colleagues. Isn't it a trade of one sort of, or is it fair to say that it's a trade of one code violation for another if the windows as they currently exist are fastened shut?
So that wouldn't be a code.
Well, hold on, I
Yeah.
wanna hear, and forgive me, then I wanna hear from Mr. Earls. So if the windows were repaired and restored, and they would still have to be fastened shut, correct?
No, if they operated in a safe manner, they could be used as an egress window.
What's a safe manner? What does that mean?
It can't slam shut on your fingers, basically. It has to stay up on its own power and keep the opening that's required, 5 square feet.
So there has to be enough friction in its action or a counterbalance, so that once open, it stays wherever it's left, doesn't have to be held.
Counterbalance, friction, you're right. Anything that
Okay.
would keep it open. Again, it's not my job to design it. I'm not trying to sound like a wise guy. It just has to meet code as it's written.
Okay, any members of the ZBA, and I know, Ms. Peck, that you still have some questions, but while we have Mr. Earls, with respect to any questions, because we're on the questions from the board, and then Mr. Shanes and Mr. Gary, I'll give you the floor as well, but anyone want to pose a question to Mr. Earls? Yes.
Mr. Earls, it's wonderful to have you on the phone. This is Ken Swanton. I'm from the board as well. I have a question. I just want to make sure I understand this. So if you have one of these sleeping rooms in this inn, if the side window is operable and meets code to open and can be an egress window, that takes care of the need for the windows in the room to meet code. As long as the other windows either stay open by themselves when they're lifted or can't be opened. Is that a good summary of what you just told us?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I think I finally got this. Thank you. It's been great having you here. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I agree. Okay, Mr. Bennett, anything for Mr. Earls?
I don't, that's been very helpful.
Very good, Mr. Chen. No. And Ms. Pecknick, was there anything that you had for Mr.
I
Earls?
just want to thank Mr. Earls because that's jogging my memory about a conversation we had about windows on 30 Winter Street some years ago, that you repair the jams, the windows operate correctly,
Okay,
and there's no code violation.
returning to Shane's, while we have Mr. Earls, since we've
Yeah.
taken this,
No, I
we've
have
taken
no
this off ramp,
questions.
we're gonna hang out here at the rest stop for a second, and then I want to get back on track, but we're on an off ramp, we have Mr. Earls and the favor of his involvement, which is.
No, I appreciate his involvement, but I do believe and I hope that our presentation was in fact consistent with what Mr. Earls had said, and that is, we could do one replacement window per room, and then the other windows would either have to be shuttered, closed, or if they could be reconstructed to stay open on their own. And I just want to let the board know that we did talk with the window restoration people, and to take those windows and then create an effective counterbalance mechanism, with the weights and everything, you're doing a whole lot more than restoring those windows. You're essentially taking them apart, rebuilding them with new jams, new weights. It's just near impossible. It's just not feasible. And again, with all due respect, we do not accept the idea that we would have to shut a window.
Okay,
Can I throw one thing too?
sure, I guess, Gary, go.
Is, the windows on the side, and maybe we had some disconnection. That's where I thought we left it on Friday. But in my opinion, and listen, this is coming from a father who's maybe a little bit over sensitive on safety. That's always been in construction, but if you have one window that is a new window that meets the ADA requirements, but then other windows look exactly the same and open and shut and this and that, how would you ever know which one's safe, fully safe? They'd be indistinguishable at that point, and at that point, a child or an adult is not gonna know that this window operates, but it doesn't fully operate completely safe and open. But that one over there definitely does. They're gonna be indistinguishable. And, the reason why, I called the window lady and all them, they didn't have good solutions to be able to make a window that doesn't have pulley systems and stuff like that to stay that way, and definitely not over the test of time. So it's not something we know that's gonna stay. So I would just slightly disagree, but that's kind of, I guess, that's where the mitigation comes in. Without the proof, like maybe would be asking.
I appreciate that,
Yeah.
Mr. Gary. Commissioner Earls, before we sort of close this out, anything that you wanted to add or comment on before we sort of move along? And thank you for your comments and for being here.
Just one thing. I'm not disagreeing that it would be unsafe the way it is now, but the one window is all that's required in the sleeping room. Everything else is either up to appeal with the BBRS, which is my oversight board, or with you. I just don't want it running into a code issue. It's not. It's about your decision.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Earls, and we appreciate your input.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so continuing in questions from the board, was Pecknick.
I just had one last question.
Yeah, you were in your.
And it was sort of given your concerns about safety. Could you respond again to Mr. Shagness' point about removing the second floor deck as a means of egress, given those safety concerns?
But yeah, it was, so we always knew that was a concern to reduce the size. We obviously would rather have a bigger backyard. We know that was a big concern of the neighbors. So after I got the pass back from the architect, I took a second look at it.
Can you say again that decks are a big concern of neighbors? Are you hearing this? Decks are a big concern of neighbors.
Well, at least in this situation, they didn't want people smoking cigarettes out there, I guess.
Was back then.
I just want to hear it.
I think it was basically, they didn't want people out there smoking at like 11 o'clock at night and have.
Congregating and making.
Yeah, so if I could make it to a platform, which did take, it wasn't, in defense of the architects, it did take some serious I almost had to redesign the entire property. But we did able to get the inside of the property had to be completely reconfigured. But I was able to dump the door on, you have them all doors hit that one. So, yeah, so that's that. And, I guess, it comes down to this is, it's an uncomfortable situation. I have my, stance and what I feel. I respect, the building commissioner's, opinion. I definitely could see wherever he's coming from. I always err to the side of safety. I do still feel and I get what he's saying, that it is code required that one window in the room is egress. But it's a very unique situation to have, typically in a window, like in a room like this, if that window's egress, then you could pretty much guarantee all the rest of them are also gonna be egress if they're the exact same size and they're the exact same double hung. It's an unexpected condition to have multiple windows in the room operate the same, but not reliable.
But if
So-
they're restored correctly in the gym.
But that's the thing, we
then they do
can't,
operate.
so if I could do that, then I wouldn't have to replace that window. The cause for replacing that window is because I believe, in my opinion, is it's accepted that those windows cannot be restored to match.
Do
full
you
code.
have something that we could look at from Allison Hardy or somebody else saying they did an on-site assessment and it's impossible to restore the windows?
Well, then you can restore. I mean, they have sticky, they have rub rails that they can slap into the jam, but they can, like you said, if they worked perfectly, then I wouldn't have to replace that one egress window because they're all the same size open, right? So the only difference between the restored windows and the one that I have to replace is that one is reliable and one is not. One has a certification, one does not. The certification means one is safe. One may be safe, but maybe not. And that's the whole reason. If they were definitely safe, then we would meet code and we wouldn't have to replace that window. So it's a decision. I mean, we can screw them shut, which I think that goes against everything on that side, or, but that is the problem with that operation, is we can make, they're basically rub strips that go inside of it, but it's, as everybody's talking, they don't over test the time. A year or two in, the rubbing gets a little less. They're not test stressed. They're not longevity tested. So in my opinion, the reason why I'm here, the reason why I'm offering a very, very expensive roof is because I just would like to sleep tight that this building is gonna be safe for a long period of time, and make sure it's always safe, so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bulgari, and thank you, Attorney Shanes, and Ms. Beckman. Anything further, Ms. Beckman?
No,
Questions?
thank you.
Okay, I won't add to the questions. I think I don't have any new questions. We haven't already unpacked, to say the least. With that, I'm going to close that section, and we'll go into deliberations. I think as a board, let's speak to the elephant in the room, figuratively, of course, first, which is, what is the sense of the board collectively and the individual sense of board members individually, regarding whether this is in fact a minor modification, because that's a finding we must make, to ratify the initial determination by the planning office. We must make the finding that it is indeed minor, that each of these three sections of it are minor, and we're speaking to the change to the rear elevation, the change to the left elevation, which is is that gonna be the northerly elevation? And no,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, just as a point of order, the only question that's before the board is whether or not the window change is a minor
okay,
modification.
then forgive me.
The other
That's correct.
changes have already been
They've already
deemed
been-
administrative, and
So we're
I just
really-
wanted to give you a heads up.
No, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Attorney Shanes. Not to make this any more complicated than it needs to be. That's my omission. So it's whether or not we, as a board, feel that this is minor with respect to the replacement of historic reproduction, true divided light, wooden sash, but not original windows. For the reasons that we've heard. And then, we can delve into it beyond that. So let's start with.
I'm sorry, Chair, and then the other items, will those be taken up separately or from given that some might be treated as minor items and some might be.
The other items Jennifer thought were minor.
Right, just want to make sure we're on the same page, but,
No,
right,
we're simply dealing with the windows.
correct, yeah.
So the other changes were administrative.
We just wanted to make sure there's no question that you're only discussing the other, right?
No, we're discussing all that we have before us is all that we're gonna discuss, which is the windows. And again, I apologize for creating that confusion. Mr. Swanton, let's start with you.
All right, I've been here, over 3 years now. I've probably seen 8 minor modifications in my time. I don't recall one taking more than 10 minutes because they've been pretty obviously minor. We're now well over an hour on this one.
Hour and 25.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's minor. I mean, it was one of the key points to the historic commission. We already had their chair say he doesn't think it's minor. He happens to agree with it. Maybe they all will. Maybe they'll love it.
Although in fairness, Mr. Richards spoke just as Glenn Richards.
I know, just as is his own opinion, just himself. He liked the windows, but he thought it was a
Right,
minor change. I mean, a major change. Anyway, I just, when we spend this much effort on something, I think it's not minor. Okay, that's my opinion.
Okay. Mr. Bennett?
Well, certainly true that we have never, in my experience, spent so much time on this request for modification. It kind of cuts both ways. On the one hand, it would suggest that this is not a modification, but on the other hand, we have dived so deeply into this at this point. I hasten or I'm reluctant to necessarily exalt form over substance here because we've learned about anything and everything we need to know about this request. So what would be the issues if we were to treat it as a minor modification? Well, one, it would not go, public was not given comment or opportunity to comment on this. Is that correct, Andrew?
Correct, to an extent, yes.
Right, to an extent. It's on the agenda, but the butters were not given notice.
Butters weren't notified. that
Right,
this was coming.
Right, but it's been on the agenda. And two, I suspect, we would have received a formal advisory opinion from the historical commission, which in my view, I would assume that it would adhere to its original position. So, and I look at the interests of the developer here, and those are interests that I think we should take into account when we try to make our decisions, and I think we do. And I'm reluctant to create a procedural barrier here when I don't need any shred of information beyond what I've heard to make a decision on the fundamental issue. So I would treat this as minor. It's unique, it's a one-off, but I'm prepared to deliberate on this as a minor modification.
Okay, Mr. Chen. I agree. I would also deliberate on the basis that it is a minor modification. Okay, and Ms. Peckett?
Again, I think because the city has a separate set of guidelines for the preservation and replacement of historical windows, doesn't strike me as a minor modification. I'm happy to deliberate on it as one, if other members feel that that's appropriate.
Well, I asked this and I hate to put you on the spot because this is, you don't have to marry yourself to that, to any decision, but from a standpoint of which direction we go, we're at a crossroads with respect to if four of us do not find that it's minor, then we ought not proceed because we can't meet the minimum vote criteria of 4 votes in the affirmative.
Yeah, no, I can't in good conscience say that I feel that it's minor.
Okay, so then I feel, like this, I come down the line of Mr. Bennett and Mr. Shannon, though, because I feel like we've really unpacked quite a bit tonight, certainly in the hour and 25. But I respect the fact that the numbers don't lie. So in that, even if I were to align with it being minor, that would be 3, which is 1 short of 4. So turning to Shane's, it seems as though if we find that it's not minor, because there aren't enough votes to make that determination, the matter fails as a minor modification and would have to be revived as a major modification, which is the same process with public notice. Do you want to be heard on any part of that before we go through the procedural steps? It falls short on the numbers, as I'm sure you know.
Well, I do agree with the members that have said, quite frankly, that the only difference between deliberating this tonight is a minor modification and determining it to be what I call a major modification, needing us to essentially start the process over. I don't believe the additional information that you're going to receive is going to, I mean, the Historic Commission could come back and say, we would prefer to see the windows reproduced, but it's still not going to solve our problem. That in doing that, we're still going to have to replace 1. And secondly, we're going to have to, potentially lock the others down. And quite honestly, sir, that's just not a risk my client wants to take. And as an attorney, someone who's going to be running an inn where they're going to be inviting people to stay, I wouldn't risk the potential for a guest, if there's ever an injury, to find out that, we could have very easily have made all the windows operational, but failed to do it because, we couldn't meet code, or we couldn't convince the Historic Commission that reproduction windows here, along with all the other, the roof and everything else that we're doing to really try and preserve here, was not acceptable. That, it somehow my client was put in a position of, whether you want to call it paranoid or not, but risking life and limb so that these windows could be restored and locked. I with all due respect, I don't see it. But of course, I do respect the board's consideration that if you want to make us go back as a major, file as a major modification, we will certainly have to do that, but I think it's wasting a lot of time.
And certainly I respect that, Attorney Shames. Would you prefer that the board take a vote, on the minor modification and allow that to be dispositive, or do you wish to withdraw and refile as a?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, sure.
It might be easier for you, rather than have us vote no and you have to start over.
Yeah.
If you simply delayed for a couple of weeks, go on and talk to the historic commission. You may find they all feel like the chair does and they like your windows,
Yeah.
in which case it gets easy.
Yeah, it comes to, I guess, yeah, because right now, I mean, part of the reason why they don't, that the preservation test, their first answer why they wouldn't talk.
Not preservation.
Or, yeah, no, I know.
They're irrelevant.
So we could go, into, but one of the questions is, I do have a code violation. So right now, if I build, right now I'm feeling frustrated
I know
because,
you have to do.
well, I
Just
can't,
offering an
if I build
alternative.
what we
Just offering
approved.
alternative, starting over completely.
Yeah, so if I build what was approved right now, I won't get CO.
Yeah, all right.
So I wonder if we could do like a.
Mr. McGarry,
If
just
I could.
give me a moment. I want to
Yeah.
hear from, Attorney DeShanes. I think
Yeah.
that there's a path. I
I,
respect what you're
Yeah.
saying, but, how do you wish to proceed?
right, with respect.
Yeah.
I think what is being suggested, and I think it is an excellent suggestion, and that would be that we would continue this hearing, not have the board make a determination of major or minor. And we would voluntarily try and get in front of the historic commission as quickly as possible so that they can provide you a comment. Mr. Swanton, if that were the case, would you feel that if you had that commentary, good or bad or otherwise, that you would then be able to consider this a minor modification?
To address your question, pretty much, yes. And my issue is that it was central to their advice to us when we approved this last year. And now they're kind of cut out of the process. And I just, if you loop them back in, it would,
And
this is
I
really two of
respect
us.
that, and the only reason I asked the question, sir, was because, again, if we continue out a month, we go see historic, and then they give you a comment, and then the board still decides, oh, this isn't minor, then I gotta start over a month from now. So with all due respect, if I think, Mr. Chairman, we would
I think
like
that's it's a fair question.
a continuance.
We,
One of the questions I was gonna ask is it possible to at least take a minor for the sides? Is that something
Don't you already have
or
that?
not?
you already have that as
Is
an
that
administrative
administrative on
document.
the sides?
And broken off separately,
Okay,
so.
because we're trying to get close for winter and that's
Yeah.
part of my
Those,
tripping up.
so that's a
timeline thing.
that's a good point, Mr. Gary.
Yeah.
It was the windows that was.
Those two issues have already been addressed
The side ones.
administratively.
Okay.
By the planning,
That was
by
just
the
one of them.
zoning codes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mr. Ford.
Okay.
So with that, we're only talking about the windows. Mr. Shanes has made a request for continuance on behalf of the applicant, for time to refine their, request for a minor modification and presumably buttress it with additional, advisory commentary, from the historic commission or other materials that they may so wish. How much time would you like?
We're gonna, just a month,
Okay.
is there a historic commission meeting between now?
For, the November 9th, the
Okay.
next meeting, and then go to the, November 14th ZBA meeting.
Okay,
That would be
November 14th, ZBA.
That would rely upon a quick turnaround for the chair. He's pretty good about it, but.
So you're
just wanna make sure you have
confident,
that.
you're confident that the historic commission can see them before us.
Correct,
Take it
yeah.
back here.
Correct. We would just want to make sure that they're reported, which usually the chair is pretty good about it and they usually do it, so.
Okay,
I'm fine with it.
fair enough. Thank you, Attorney Shanes, Mr. McGarry. Do we have a motion to continue the matter to November 14th, for further input by the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Swanton, and seconded by Mr. Bennett. Motion's made and seconded on the motion to continue. Calling the roll, Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Ms. Peckman.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, yes. That's 5 in the affirmative on the motion to continue. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time and consideration.
I feel like this wasn't by any means squandered time. It's important for us to.
Well, I think it's been an education for all of us.
It's a big project, so we look forward to, seeing you again, in 2 weeks, or I'm sorry, in 1 month.
All right.
Okay,
Sounds good.
have a good
Thank
evening,
you.
and, Thank you again. Yes. Okay, going into our public hearing, this is the matter of 14 Peyton Street, the application by John Patton and Julie Christie, care of Lisa Mead, Tellerman and Costa LLC. The matter is continued from our hearing date of September 26th, 2023. This is a special permit for nonconformities. The applicant seeks all necessary permits, permissions, and approvals for the renovation to a single-family house, including the removal of existing second floor bay window, and the addition of a second story to the west side porch, and a second floor deck to the rear of the structure. Yes.
This item, has a request for continuance to November 28th.
November 28th. We have a motion to continue to November 28th.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded by Mr. Bennett. Motion made by Mr. Swanton, on the motion to continue to November 28th. Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon. Yes. Ms. Peckman.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Matter is continued. And forgive me, I missed that, or else I would have made that shorter. We have a matter of Michael Burke, 16 Oakland Street. This is a special permit for nonconformities. The applicant seeks all necessary permits, permissions, and approvals to construct a room at the back of an existing one single family residence, extending a pre-existing non-conforming side yard setback. May we hear from the applicant? Good evening. Good evening.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
My name is Nicole. My name is Michael Burke. My brother-in-law Charles Lieberman, who has helped develop the plans and is going to help us with the project.
Very good, thank you, and I apologize, we're a distance away, if I can just ask you we're just trying to hear over the air machine over here, if you can
Okay.
speak up just a bit. But, very nice to meet you folks, thank you for your patience, and, we'll look forward to your presentation. You have the floor.
So this slide is our existing lot in yellow, 16 Oakland Street. If you can see that on the south side, perhaps, going down the street, there's very little space between our neighbors, and that's the existing nonconformity. We did a renovation in 2005 that extended that, and that was completed. On this slide, this shows the proposed site plan, off the back of the house, you see the proposed addition. You'll be removing that existing deck and just extending that and then enclosing it. Again, you see the non-conformity on, to the side. And then this slide. The proposed addition in yellow, back of the house. The elevation of the rear and west. Also the plan. Side you see the north side. And on this one, this is the south. Plan. On the next slide. And then shows. Anything else? Yes,
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. I was just I'm looking at my screen
okay,
because it's hard for me to turn around and see that. I have it
Right.
on my screen.
right.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think so.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much.
Small addition of the back.
Right.
Doesn't meet the setbacks.
Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. We'll go ahead and close that portion of the public hearing and go to any public comment. Anyone who wishes to speak, please raise your hand. We have 0 attendees online, so I'll look at the room.
May I also say that.
We chased them and scared them away with talking all about windows.
Windows,
Will
right.
your structure have
I
any
don't think we
windows?
have any problem with windows.
Did
It
you,
must be modern.
yeah, no, what did you wish to
I
add
just
something?
wanted to say that we have 3, perhaps 4 letters of support that were uploaded.
Yes, we have those, and thank you.
Yeah.
Those, that's always important for us to sort of get a sense of the abutters, and thank you for providing those. Seeing no hands in the room, I will close the public comment section and go to questions from the board. Mr. Swanton?
Yeah, first I want to compliment you on, even though the drawings seem to be hand-drawn, they're quite clear. And not everybody needs to hire lawyers and very expensive people to come before us, so I admire your courage.
Thank you.
Not that there's anything wrong with any of those folks.
I have lawyers on both sides of me here, so just, so you know. It does say that the siding's gonna match the existing, and I think you show somewhere the existing is clapboards with 4.
It is cement board siding, yes, clapboard.
So so that on this new addition, there'll be clapboards
All gonna match, yeah.
where there aren't windows.
Yes.
Yeah, I just was checking that. No, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chen.
I guess in looking at the drawings, you have to draw some conclusions. What's the building gonna sit on?
That's gonna be a 4-foot foundation. It's gonna be a 4-foot.
4-foot.
Concrete foundation with a
Okay.
slab.
And, you know, based on the slope, it has to be a rubber roof.
Yes.
And it's 3 seasons, so it won't be heated?
It may be 4 seasons. It may have some electric heat in it.
I have no other questions.
Very good. Ms. Beckman?
No question.
And I do have no questions. I think the drawing's clear and it's sharp, it gets the message across. So thank you. I share Mr. Swanton's sentiment. We'll close the questions from the board section and go into deliberations. And again, we're deliberating the criteria for a special permit for nonconformities. With that, we will start with Mr. Swanton.
Well, the first criteria is, are there new nonconformities? And I don't see any new nonconformities. It's not like you're getting closer to a lot line or creating a problem in some area. The second criteria is it more detrimental to the neighborhood than what's already there? And this is just in your backyard. You have a deck there. Now you have a 3 or 4 season room that's kind of tucked in from both sides. So, and it's only 1 story. I don't see this as being more detrimental to the neighborhood. So I can support this application.
Very good. Mr. Bennett?
I agree with Mr. Swanton. He's the issues.
Very good. Mr. Chen?
I agree, but it seems only proper that we should beat this for at least an hour.
Yeah.
You did scare us.
We did a window for an hour and a half.
Did you call him a lawyer?
Did you good folks bring a window with you? Bring a window for everybody? No, that's a good, any,
But I can support the application.
Ms. Peckett?
Likewise.
Yeah,
can
and I
support too,
agree.
yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Beckett, and I agree. I believe the applicants have met the criteria. It's a modest modification, modest addition, and they have support of the abutters, and no one is voiced any objection. That speaks volumes, as those most close in proximity would have the most to say if they had something critical to say, and we don't see any of that. In fact, we see the opposite. So unless there's anything further, I'll close deliberations and entertain a motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the special permit for nonconformities for 16 Oakland Street.
Thank you, Mr. Swanton. I'll second that. Mr. Shannon on the second, motion's made by Mr. Swanton on the motion to approve and seconded by Mr. Shannon. Calling the roll, Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Ms. Beckman.
Yes.
And Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative, folks. The ayes have it. Motion carries and your application's approved. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, folks. That was quick and painless.
I know.
I would like to thank Kate Sullivan. I worked with her through this and she was tremendous. So,
We're all very lucky, all of us, to have that office and everyone.
Next time, bring a window
I'll bring some, hopefully this on the next time. Thank you.
and donuts.
Yeah.
Take care, folks. Okay, the last matter on our agenda this evening is the application of Zachary Golub and Catherine DeFranzo. My apologies, sir, if I mispronounced that. Care of Lisa Mead, Tellerman and Costa LLC. This is the matter of 49 Phillips Drive. It is a special permit to allow the use of an in-law apartment within the existing structure. May we hear from the applicant, counsel?
All right, good evening, Chair and members of the board, as well as staff. My name is Ryan Clemens from Mead, Tellerman and Costa, here tonight on behalf of Zachary Golub, who's joining us, and Catherine DeFranzo, who just under a month ago welcomed their daughter Vivienne. Which is partly why we are here tonight in connection with that application dated September 28, 2023, for a special permit to use the existing in-law apartment at 49 Phelps Drive pursuant to section 12A of Newburyport zoning ordinance. So to orient ourselves, 49 Phillips is a single-family residence in the R1 zoning district with pre-existing nonconformities of lot area, frontage, and front yard setback. The property conforms to all other dimensional controls and none are proposed to change. And in 2004, this board issued a special permit to 49 Phillips prior owners to construct a new in-law apartment. And to conform with the ordinance, since it was new construction at the time, the apartment was 672 square feet and contained 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room. And in the plan we're about to see on the next slide, that area exclusive to the in-law was outlined in red. There was also a 234 square foot green outlined area that was common to the apartment and to the house, which included laundry room, full bathroom, linen closet, and the stairs to the basement. The special permit expired 3 years later in 2007, as the prior owners never renewed the permit. So on the next slide, please, we can see the plot plan from the recent sale to give you an idea of the property and the layout. And on the slide after that is the floor plan from the 2007, from the 2004 special permit showing the area exclusive to the in-law apartment outlined in red and the area in common outlined in green. And again, that area in red is less than 700 square feet since it was new construction at the time. And the area in green, the 234. So that brings us to the present application on the next slide for a new special permit to use the in-law apartment now. Since there's no new construction or additions proposed, the in-law apartment would now extend into the former common area, except for the stairs to the basement, as we're going to see in the new floor plans, for a total of 817 square feet, which is still under the applicable minimum of 900. And again, there's no change to footprint or to either for the house's overall footprint. And so the applicant seek the special permit to use that new configuration, which on the next slide, we can see the in-law apartment expanding take over that 200 square foot space to the side, again minus the stairs, but still keeping the same layout as before. So this application, the apartment meet each of the ordinance's requirements as follows. Requirement A, the relatives and residents requirement. Catherine DeFranzo's parents will occupy the apartment to help take care of the newborn baby. And especially as both parents both applicants still need to commute to the city and have their own schedule. So it's demanding time for them. For requirement B, that dimensional requirements must be met. So the house again is pre-existing non-conforming and had already received a permit in 2004 with these dimensions, and again, no control is proposed to change. For requirement C, floor area requirement, the 900-foot maximum, except for new construction, which is capped at 700. The apartment was newly constructed in 2007 and complied then, as there's no new construction now or addition. The 900 square foot maximum applies, and the total apartment as laid out on the floor plan is at 817 square feet, well within that maximum. For requirement D, that the board may impose reasonable restrictions, including an extra parking space per the minimum required. The property meets that as well. There are 3 parking spaces on site, and there will continue to be 3 parking spaces there. Requirement E, safety, health, and building codes, all of those will be met. Requirement F, that this decision should be granted be recorded. Yes, we will record the decision should you grant it. Requirement G, recertification, the applicants are free to recertify as applicable. Requirement H, the expiration terms, the applicants agree to that as well. Requirement I, removing the kitchen upon last of the permit, applicants agree to that. And requirement J, inspection upon notice, applicants agree to that finally as well. So to summarize, the applicants hereby request the board to approve the new special permit to use the existing in-law apartment at 49 Phillips Drive, as all requirements of section 12A will be met or are already met, and the board should have also received the letters of non-opposition from the next door neighbors to 49 Phillips. So thank you for your consideration. Look forward to any questions we may have.
Thank you, council. We will close the presentation portion of the public hearing and go to this vast sea of eager folks to participate in any public comment. Seeing no hands, we will close that portion of the public comment. There are no hands, no attendees online, so we will close the public comment and go to questions from the board. Mr. Swanton, any questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
No questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Just a point of clarity, so there is an existing in-law apartment there. This is actually gonna be reconfigured. Is there construction required to make the reconfiguration?
There's no construction required. The plans had considered moving a door from the wall, but now that the applicants have moved in, they seem fine with it. So
Okay, so it is as it is.
as is.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
No, congratulations on maybe and having the in-laws there to, good one.
Yeah, that was a big sell.
Yeah, for sure. And Ms. Beckman, anything?
No questions.
Great. I don't have any questions either, so we'll close the questions from the board and go into deliberation, starting with Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I mean, I can support this because, well, the neighbors support it, but it seems to tick all the boxes. I mean, it's a blood relative, it's your parents. They'll be very helpful with this newborn, I'm sure. It meets the dimensional requirements, it meets the parking, and negligible traffic. I don't see it impairing the neighborhood, so I can support this.
Mr. Bennett.
I agree. It's both a requirement for a special permit, in-law special permit, so special permit for non-conformity.
Mr. Chairman.
I can also support it. Do you want us to review the 9 prongs prior to this?
If you know them and want to shout them out, we'll hear you.
There's no way to take them up en masse.
You can say that you feel that that the criteria.
I think the criteria have been met, including the 9 prongs under section 10H7 of the reward zoning ordinance. And therefore I can support the application.
Very good. And Ms. Becker?
Yes, I support it as well.
I too find that the applicant has met the criteria. Congratulations as well. And I too, I feel it's a very ordinary and modest request. I can support it. Seeing no further deliberations, I'll close that final portion and entertain a motion to approve the special permit to allow the use of an in-law apartment within the existing structure at 49 Phillips Drive.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Swanton.
I will second
Bennett
that.
in a second. Motion's made and seconded. Motion made by Mr. Swanton, seconded by Mr. Bennett, calling the roll. Mr. Swanton?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon? Yes. Ms. Peckman?
Yes.
And Rob Champetti, yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you very much for your patience as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And good luck.
Very nice.
You too. Thank you. All right, concluding the business of the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals public hearings, I'll close that section. And what we have before us is our business meeting, which is a continuation. We have before us the approval of the minutes from 10/10/2023 by the lovely and talented Ms. Gretchen Joy, who suffers through writing. Do we have any changes, modifications? We have a motion.
No minor modifications either to the minutes,
Any
no major
windows?
modifications.
No one will ever bring a window to this meeting again.
Yeah, we should have like a bouncer at the door. Keep the window up, I was like, checking, do you have any bags? Is that siding? You're gonna have to leave that in. Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes? I'll move. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion's made and seconded. This is a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no votes. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, Greg. Both, minutes are approved. I have no other comments, and I believe neither does Mr. Ford. No, you, I'm just kidding.
No, short-term rental, next city council meeting, maybe not.
Wait a minute, when is that? Is that-
The 30th, there may or may not be a road cruise off regulation, which may or may not send more special permits to away.
Let me ask, if there isn't, it will die on the vine. Does this die in committee? I wouldn't know.
Correct, but then would have to be a new proposal.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
So is it that toward?
I would hope after a 2.5 year process, where that might have some regulations, despite debates about the spectrum.
Well, I'm gonna, I shared this with Mr. Swanton. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but I have the privilege of teaching a zoning class that I had the additional separate indignity and privilege of having written, but I'm writing a module on short-term rental unit, and you're all invited to audit my course.
Oh, yay, okay.
And you'll all be called on, I assure you. No, but it's remarkable that we as a city have been waiting for. I'm not waiting, but not waiting, that suggests like someone's been inactive. They have been working on trying to find the common path. I gotta believe it's a better product in the end, if there's a product, right? But, we'll see. Thanks for everything. Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Motion. Thanks, guys.